Hi, my name is Eileen Bates and welcome to my video blog, or vlog as they call it. I'm doing this document of change, journey of change I'm calling it, because there's so much in my life that parallels so many millions of women out there that I know are not getting treated for what they truly have, and also are being turned away by many doctors because of not having the knowledge. But before we get into all of that, I'm going to start at the beginning. I was 17 years old in school, a senior actually in high school, the only girl without a period, I'm sure. But I was very nervous about the whole situation that I didn't have a period. I thought something was very wrong. I went to my OBGYN and she tells me that I'm normal, all my female parts are there, and you must just be late. So I took it for what she said and I left there kind of confused, but went back at 18. Still no period. Well, I still think you're late, she says, but she gives me birth control pills to bring on a period. I did that. She said maybe once this starts it, you'll continue bringing on a period on your own. Of course that doesn't happen, no period, which takes me to age 21. Being frustrated, I was told to seek a specialist. I went to a reproductive endocrinologist, and he told me my insulin resistance was extremely high. I was always putting on weight, inching up little by little, and he said what you have is polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS for short, and now I had a name to what I had. This made sense. So I took it for what that was, and this is the answer, and I was supposed to take metformin, which is a drug to lower my insulin. Did that. You should get your period, he says. No period. Kind of got frustrated, and I was, that was that. Metformin lasted about a year, and then I was on no medication, and again, no periods. This brings me to age 24, went back to a different reproductive endocrinologist who is one of the leading in the country. His name is Dr. Jerome Check, and he starts working with me because I'm ready to have children, and he gives me additional reproductive drugs like Clomid, metformin again, and nothing. Not even a follicle. Tons of ultrasounds, tons of needles, and the same kind of pattern is starting to happen. It doesn't make sense, but you're normal. The levels are coming back normal. So I go on with this pattern. It takes me to age 27 before they can actually get a follicle. Once they get a follicle, they were able to actually do IUIs, which I was told that it takes about 6 IUIs, and lo and behold, on the 6th IUI, I did get pregnant, I did conceive, and by 9 weeks, I had lost the baby, no heartbeat, and it looked like it had collapsed into itself, so I needed to get a D&E, and this was devastating because of all the hard work and efforts. At this point, it's now 3 years past with the journey of trying to have a child, and my doctor and myself, we both said it's time for the big stuff. Let's do in vitro fertilization, or IVF, and very expensive. Entire savings you have to save for these things, and I knew it was worth it because I want that child. So he starts hitting me with the high dose injectables. Over time, they were able to go in. I had the procedure, and they pulled out a total of only 9 eggs. The first IVF attempt fails, and they didn't know why, no explanation for it. They said that this can be normal. I go back for a frozen procedure. They put back in all 5 eggs, which is, I know, dangerous, but 1 did take, and that 1 split into identical twins. So you can imagine my joy. I'm thinking I've got my child back from the last pregnancy loss, and now I'm going to have 2 children. And I'm being followed. I'm being given extra progesterone because my progesterone, and this is also key, and I'm going to learn, I guess, as we go along why it's key, but my progesterone always was low. A normal woman's progesterone has to be around 7, I believe, when they're ovulating. Mine could never get above a 0.6. I never even made it to 1. So I was on progesterone injections, progesterone supplements, and that was actually keeping my twins that I found out at 16 weeks. I was having twin boys, and they do have names. Their names are Aaron and Ian, and I knew that I was carrying them. I made it past the first trimester. I was released from the reproductive endocrinologist's office, and everyone said, this is great, this is going to happen for you. And 19 weeks, my water breaks, and I lose both boys, born on 2 separate days, each born alive, because they were perfect. The problem here was they didn't know why my water broke. They said, well, it could be an identical twin issue, maybe twin-to-twin transfusion. However, I always knew in the back of my mind that my body was not quite right. Maybe it had something to do with the PCOS. I wasn't sure, and they said you can just keep trying again. This is the pattern that happens with these infertility clinics. You go back, you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. After I lost my twins, after I lost the baby at 9 weeks, it was time for me to regroup and take a break from all the fertility pursuits. So I just left it, and I left it for about 2 years. So I decided after 2 years of losing my twins, constantly gaining weight. I want to also touch on an interesting subject that I find fascinating and always intrigued me, is when I was pregnant with those twins for just about 5 months. It's the only time in my life I ever lost weight, and I lost 70 pounds in 5 months. That always seemed a little strange, but we'll go back to that point as well. I have swelling as a result of giving birth to those twins. It came on about the 2nd day of recovering. Now, doctor said that's normal. Your body is getting used to the hormones again. I said fine. Of course, the swelling continued and has never left me, both ankles and feet. It's very annoying when you want to exercise or walk. You can't bend your toes. If I can explain this to you, if these are my toes, if my fingers are my toes, then you actually have the swelling that comes and overflows, so you can't really walk because it's just, there's no definition in the feet. My husband and my daughter actually call it Shrek foot because we didn't know what else to call it. And if you guys are wondering about that, that was from the movie Shrek. And if you ever check out their feet, that's what my feet look like. So we just had to deal with it, and it prevented me sometimes from doing long walks, which I wanted to do. So we continued to find a new doctor, and I went to this doctor and just found her on the internet, and I went and I said, I don't get a period. Here's my life up to this point. She wanted to run the whole gambit of tests. We did that. Things are coming back normal. She tells me that I think you have the slightest of the slightest PCOS. Now, where this is confusing for me is I have 2 ovaries that have rings around both ovaries filled with cysts. So somebody looking at my ovaries from an internal ultrasound would definitely say polycystic ovarian syndrome because 2 rings of cysts make complete sense. But this is the first doctor that just looking at the numbers in front of her said, I don't think you have PCOS. Where this is confusing is I asked her, with 2 ring of cysts around both ovaries, with struggling with infertility my entire life, no periods, what do you think then it is that I have? I was very intrigued. And you know what she says to me? You need to lose weight. And I left that doctor's office with my best friend at my side, and I burst into tears because if it was weight, when I was 17 years old, I was 150 pounds. So at 150 pounds, 17, way past the time of getting your period, I would have had a period. So I knew she was wrong, but she did touch base on one thing that I reflect on now. I don't think you have PCOS. First time I had ever heard that. That brings us to this summer, July 2010. I'm a singer. I had an important summer intensive that I was actually going to participate in, to sing for. I had been training for. Of course, the week before the summer intensive, I had the worst sore throat. I was sick, and it was coming on, and when I get sick, it lingers. So what I decided to do was, I don't like doctors with all of my bad experiences. I decided to go to my family doctor, give me the antibiotic. I have this summer intensive. I need help. What do I do? She gave me a normal antibiotic. I had had that before. And she says, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you prednisone to help inflammation around your throat. I just said, okay, I'm willing to try anything. And I was given a script for strong dose of prednisone starting at 30 milligrams. It was tapered down into 10 milligrams. And so I just did what she assigned, and something interesting, very interesting, happened to me. My ankles, back to those Shrek feet and ankles, they shrunk to the point where my daughter, who's 9 years old, said, wow, look at those pretty ankles and feet. She was shocked to see them. She's never really, it's a distant memory when I had ankles. So that was the first clue, a very important clue. And also, my energy was high, and by the end of the week, I was still sick, but I attended my event. I was in a taxi cab in New York City, and I was sitting down and felt a slight twinge on my left ovary. Kind of the slight twinge, a distant memory of when I was doing in vitro fertilization, that some activity was going on. Beautiful ankles that were not swollen, slight ovarian twinges. It stuck in my mind. A big red flag went up, and I thought, I have to do something here. I'm going to research this for the next week. And I researched every day. It actually took me 5 days before, I guess my Google search was proper, but I ended up doing prednisone and PCOS, which took me to an article that we actually have on our website now that you can go to. And it was really describing PCOS, but at the very bottom it said a common misdiagnosis for PCOS is non-classical congenital adrenal hyperplasia. This is something I've never heard of in my life. All these doctors, all this time, and I've never even heard of a common misdiagnosis for PCOS. So something else triggered. I must read this further, and every piece of information I can find on non-classical. Well, it started building and building and building. Every piece of the puzzle was coming together, and I cried. I cried reading every piece because I knew that this is what I had. I had to get it confirmed, but I knew. And on top of everything else, I called my mom at home, 2 in the morning, still tears streaming down my face, and I said, I know that we have a Jewish background, but it talks about Ashkenazi Jewish being 1 out of 27 do have this mutation. And she says, oh honey, your father's Ashkenazi Jewish, which actually means Eastern European Jewish. So it's a very broad word that I wasn't really very familiar with. And now I understand that this, at that moment, this is what I have. And I had to go back to my family doctor, and I had to have her write a script for what they test for, this DNA mutation. And here's where it got a little crazy, because my family doctor said, what is this? She wrote it down on a script, kind of, okay, I'll write it down. And I took that script and I took it to the lab, and it took 1 hour after calling around to their lab managers and everything to find that they do in fact do this test, because it's so specialized. But they did do the test, and 2 weeks later my family doctor does get the information back that I do have one of the common mutations, which is the V281L mutation for non-classical congenital adrenal hyperplasia.